Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's time for Industries Live again, and we're super excited to be joining you. I'm joining you from sunny, wet Seattle. Unfortunately, it's raining here. My name is Michael Schmidt. I lead industry partnerships here at AWS, and I'm joined by Adi Dabashi. Hey, Adi, how are things in New York today? Is it sunny?
It is sunny here in New York, and we have game season going on. The New York Knicks, FIFA coming up. Oh my God, it is absolutely nonstop, but it's exciting, as New York City always is. I'm Adi Dabashi. I lead financial services partners, specifically focusing on those industry solutions, solving for line of business use cases. Our teams combine the capabilities of our partners in AWS to solve for those needs of our customers. And I'm always excited to be on Industries Live because this is an opportunity to really dive into true partner stories and capabilities that are solving for some of these. So excited to be on.
Nice, good to see Adi. And yes, it is an exciting time. It's I want to tell you, next week my allegiances are going to be truly tested because Australia are taking on the United States in the FIFA World Cup here in beautiful Seattle. So I'll Aussie. I think I have to be a little bit careful about that. But anyway, it is a very exciting time of year. Enough about that. It's Industries Live time. So if you are joining us for the first time, Industries Live is our every second week show where we talk to our industry partners about the things they're seeing in their industry, the things that we're seeing in the industry at large, what they're hearing from their customers, what AI is meaning for their business. I love it because it means we get an opportunity to really hear the really great stories about the really interesting things that are happening. And we talk in really practical terms about, what it means for our end customers ultimately. So I'm super excited about the show we have ahead today. We're talking financial services, and Adi, I don't know, I know you've been looking forward to this one, but we're going to get Matt in from SEON. So why don't we introduce Matt? Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Excellent. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. You're joining us from, whereabouts are you? Florida, did you say?
Yeah, Fort Lauderdale this morning, and it is very
nice here. I can imagine. I think we're, we often joke that Seattle's the last place in the United States to get the day. We're the last time zone, but we're also the last place in the United States probably to get the summer. I think it's probably a couple of weeks away here, and we'll be able to put our sweaters away for the rest of the year. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself and just perhaps and SEON, you might want to tell us just a little bit about what you do at SEON and a little bit about SEON itself.
Sure, yeah. My name is Matt Delora. I'm the president of go-to-market at SEON Technologies, and we are an AI command center for fraud prevention and financial crime compliance. We work with any digital company in the world, but focus very heavily on financial services and companies in the fintech space to help them sort of transform their operations and prevent more fraud losses and stay compliant with changing regulatory needs.
That's awesome. And I've had the chance to be in this space. Before AWS, I worked for a large bank, and it was such a sophisticated field. This is a subject, it's complex. You have to continually kind of understand the complexity in which you have bad actors, changing the way in which they can do fraud, navigate and work around systems. And a lot of these systems historically used to be built on traditional rules, fully written out rules that were step by step and then validated by human beings, which was something that led to a lot of false flagging. So I've happened to see that. But Matt, you've been at the heart of this industry. SEON's truly transforming this and getting it ready for an AI world. Tell us some of the trends you're seeing and a little bit about that history about SEON as well.
Sure, yeah. SEON was founded in 2017. Our two founders were sort of college roommates who launched one of the first crypto exchanges in Central and Eastern Europe. And immediately they just got hammered by fraud. And so it was a bootstrap business and everything came directly out of their pockets. And they looked out in the marketplace and they saw a vendor landscape that was very fragmented. Lots of companies that specialized in a niche type of signals intelligence or single step in the customer journey. And they thought, well, this is going to be a very complicated project to implement all of these things. And they wanted something that had, public API specs and you could download it and trial it and experiment in Postman and those kinds of things. And there really just wasn't anything out there. So they decided to invent it. And that was the genesis of the company about 10 years ago. And where we're at today is, the fastest growing fraud company in the world that's operating at kind of any level of scale and serving customers in over 40 countries.
You hear it described as fraud now being described as an AI scaled problem, Matt. What does that really mean for our listeners? Like that's a bit of an industry buzzword term that we hear a lot, but what does it mean for our listeners?
Yeah, it's one of the kind of three big industry trends in financial services that are kind of helping drive our strategy. The first is that the exposure to AI scale fraud is significantly larger than it was even a couple of years ago because big companies are trying to act small and small companies are trying to act big. So what I mean by that is the large traditional financial services players are threatened by challenger banks, digital banks, and these companies that sort of move fast and provide amazing digital experiences. So they're increasingly providing more digital products. And then what you used to see in the fintech space is companies would emerge typically around a specific financial services product. And then when they achieve the level of scale, they would add diversity to their offerings. But now we're seeing companies at, series A, B, and C that have, they're doing digital lending, they're a card issuer, they're doing depository accounts, they're doing, crypto. And so they understand that to capture the lifetime value of their customers, they need to provide more services akin to the way a large company has a big portfolio. And what that's done is sort of orders of magnitude increase the number of digital surfaces that are out there, which are attack vectors for fraudsters. The second big trend that we see is this kind of the convergence between in financial services, fraud, financial crimes, and security. So increasingly, there's now more cooks in the kitchen with respect to decision-making around tools and policies and those kinds of things, which does complicate things. It's probably good in the long term, but where we're at today, it does mean more cooks in the kitchen. And then the adversary is taking advantage of these two trends, which is the third big trend, which is, they've undergone a AI transformation probably faster than most of the companies they're attacking, right? So there used to be a trade-off if you were a sophisticated fraudster between so the volume of attacks that you could execute and the level of sophistication associated with it, right? The easiest way to think about this is the sort of, the Nigerian prince email scam, right? If you want to send out 2 million emails, you probably aren't going to have like the best grammar or the most specific language to be able to, attack those things versus say a spear phishing attack where somebody would go after a specific employee that was sort of high value. Now what you're seeing is that the amount of data that's available from breaches on the dark web can be sort of federated very easily by large language models into synthetic identities and the types of attacks that feel very sophisticated. They're very hard to detect, and they're also being executed at scale, and they're being done in a way where you don't have to have a hacker level skill set to be able to execute these things anymore. So the AI transformation of the adversary happened very quickly, and they're operating at AI scale now.
Go ahead, sorry, Michael.
No, I was just going to say it's we think about it from two directions. We think of AI-led defense, but of course the AI-led attacks and just all of the new attack vectors that are just completely different to what we would have seen two to 3 years ago. And the sophistication is just something that's it's really astounding how much things are different to how they were just 2 or 3 years ago. Sorry, Addy, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was kind of plus one to that. And I think one of the unique aspects here is that attack surface changing, right? These large institutions having to be nimble and operate as fintechs, the niche players who have to kind of have an entire portfolio of products, but that means that you need to have end-to-end security, compliance, fraud prevention tools. And as we started off, like, this is an entire field. It's a subject. You don't simply kind of pick up on a ready model. You have patterns and cases and decisioning that you've learned through experience. When is a human in the loop necessary? When can you automate? What's a pattern when an AI is operating? And how do you quickly adapt that pattern with the right machine learning algorithms, right? Sometimes Gen AI isn't the answer. It is traditional machine learning statistical models that must be applied. Matt, you've really kind of been at the heart of this. So what differentiates SEON in here? And what have you seen kind of continually help SEON bring value to customers of different sizes?
Yeah, I think even as recently as maybe a year ago, there was still a lot of hesitancy among sort of regulators around, deterministic decisioning done by AI, right? Like, is this customer on a sanctions list or not? Can I onboard them into my platform? And where do I allow an AI that might be a little kind of black boxy to fit into that process? We've seen that kind of melt away a little bit, and with this convergence of sort of fraud and financial crime teams are looking more at sort of the probabilistic determination engines that are available to fraud prevention, because fraud prevention is always a probabilistic determination, right? You're taking a look at a small number of maybe signals that you have on a customer interaction or a transaction, and basically trying to guess, hopefully with like high recall and high precision, like whether that is a bad actor or not. And so I think LLMs have really transformed investigative work. So when you think about how decisioning happens, it's generally like RAG. It's red, amber, green, right? The tools are very good at spotting obvious fraud, obvious financial crimes. They're very good at spotting good customers now, increasingly, and providing them with a better path through. But there's still that piece in the middle, where depending on your strategy as a company, whether you've just moved into a new market and maybe the fraud vectors look a little bit different, the typology is slightly different, or you're in customer acquisition mode, right? And so you want to index on having a little bit lower recall in order to onboard a lot of customers onto your platform. That investigative nature, where things typically were done by large offshore teams and manual review, has been completely transformed by AI. AI is amazing at looking at 6, 7, 8, 900 different data points and aggregating them in a way that's really digestible in sort of bullet point formats, and turning those folks into sort of 10 or 100x investigators.
While we're talking about that, Matt, I mean, I know that if we think about fraud detection tools, historically focused primarily on what we call the front door, so onboarding, registration, that was probably where we were. But SEON really focuses on the end-to-end life cycle, I guess, and on the whole end-to-end life cycle of what fraud detection means. Like, explain to our viewers, what does that mean in practice? Like, what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. If you only have security at the front door, then you're sort of missing a lot of obvious things. What we see when we go out on the dark web is we see accounts for sale with major fintechs that are sort of like already past KYC, right? So fraudsters are really good at creating these synthetic identities and generating accounts and then selling them for nefarious purposes. So if you're not looking at sort of the login activity, the device intelligence, the behavioral biometrics of returning users, then you're going to miss a lot of what we call mule accounting, which is, this looked like a good customer, but now something's changed. They've updated their profile, they're logging in from a new geolocation with a different device. Like, how do we treat that customer? And even on the front door, I think the level of sophistication has changed a lot because of the nature of AI. So AI tools are really good at learning. And so if you're perpetrating, a large coordinated attack, like blocking users at the front door from getting in, actually trains the AI model. So like, you're basically labeling data for these folks. Yeah. It's getting increasingly sophisticated where, you do want a risk profile. So you may see something risky and you want to let it onto the platform, but in a gated way, and maybe lower the risk tolerance related to the behavior of that user. And trying to stay one step ahead of the AI means looking at every authentication attempt, looking at every profile change, looking at every transaction, but in the context of very large amounts of data. So in order for us to be successful at that, we've had to implement a lot of different technologies via AWS to allow us to contextually analyze one transaction in the context of maybe every login or every session that's happened with a user over the past 30 days.
And I think something I've seen, right, just a few years ago, when we used to meet with customer leaders, this is the CISO, the CFO, they would really kind of try to measure how they could reduce false flagging. This was a direct metric. It would be directly related to number of people spending hours trying to evaluate cases. And then that would have a business impact to them, both at the regulatory level, which could result in fines if you're not compliant. But on the other side, it was about also making sure that the customer experience is smooth without kind of slowing down the entire workflow. But in an age of AI, that's completely changed. I can imagine about a year ago, you'd have a consulting firm come in and say, I'm going to go through this entire workflow and process. I'm going to tune things a little bit. I'm going to help you drop false flagging by 10, 15%. And that was appreciated. That was direct business value, to these stakeholders, and the value was measured. But that completely changes in a world of AI. You're talking about patterns that are rapidly adapting. If you've written out a workflow that may fit a certain kind of check that would solve for a crime, that the nature of that crime may change as well. And so you need both that micro level tuning of how to catch the particular scenario, but also that macro pattern that's kind of playing out globally. So if you're seeing it in one place, you want to be able to replicate that elsewhere. And you guys have done that in a very interesting way when it came to several scenarios, whether it was rewards. Any interesting customer stories that have kind of bubbled up and kind of shown this as a differentiated play compared to what it was in the past?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really more today about anomaly detection, right? Like, so you have your policy and you expect your policy to catch a significant amount of like fraud and financial crime and not create too much customer friction. But I think about one of our large customers, one of the most successful fintechs in the US, which is Build Rewards. And they're a loyalty program for, homeowners and renters that allow them to earn points on sort of rent payments and mortgage, but also on like travel and dining and those kinds of things. So you think about what a complicated set of services and financial products that is, right? They're issuing a card, they're accepting payments, they're calculating points, there's, earning points and redeeming points and sort of transferring them between platforms, across the way. But what they really needed was the ability to look at all of those customer interactions, which are very different, making a bill payment versus, redeeming rewards with an airline. Very different things, and have a consistent view of the signals intelligence of that user across all those interactions. So through the entire platform, looking at things like behavioral biometrics, suspicious device flags, persistent hashes and algorithmic hashes related to returning users, but also trying to detect very, I would say, sophisticated forms of registration fraud and synthetic identities at the front door. Previously to working with us, they had multiple different systems for this purpose, and those systems didn't really talk to each other. So in order to do decisioning, it was a lot of spreadsheets, things getting downloaded and exported and compared. And oftentimes they were finding fraud like far after it happened. So with a single system like SEON, where we're looking at every customer interaction, we have the ability to perform anomaly detection and create a network graph of, the connections between attributes of a customer, not just customers, but how many customers are on, the same version of a device coming from the same range of IP addresses that are all spoofing HTML5 on the device or something like that. Those like very subtle signals that get surfaced very early in an attack can be the difference between, hundreds of dollars in losses or hundreds of thousands of dollars in losses. And, their director of identity and fraud, really helped us sort of coin the term for the company, which is that, it functions as a command center. We bring all the signals intelligence and all the customer interactions into one place. And then we have a diversity of analysis that allows them to be proactive for surfacing these like very subtle connections between potential bad actors.
You talked a little bit about business impact there, Matt, and just sort of wind back a little bit there in terms of what are the top things that they've seen in terms of optimization, cost savings, productivity. Like what are the key metrics that you're seeing that your customer has kind of benefited from or has been able to see the impact of working with you?
Yeah, there's a lot of different metrics that are very sort of niche to fraud, and fraud teams often have like a lot of challenges like communicating those things to other departments. But generally, it's people look at what is the total cost of fraud, and that is the sum of all the expenses related to the headcount, to the tools, and then the losses themselves, and then potentially the deflection of good customers and sort of the opportunity cost associated with that. And so when we move in, we're able to make a significant dent in the cost of fraud by replacing a lot of legacy systems, one. And then, allowing the team to scale revenue and customers asymmetrically with a sort of linear or less than linear increase in the OpEx related to the people that are required to do the investigations. And then obviously, like, we find a lot of fraud. And so reducing losses is sort of the very direct impact, but also helping them identify the best customers. Because what you don't want to do is just add friction to potential bad actors in a scenario. You also want to provide, the highest velocity route for known good customers that have great attribution to like get into an experience where they're enjoying your product and becoming a lifelong customer very quickly.
Awesome. Matt, look, you've been an AWS partner for a number of years. I know you've achieved enormous growth. I think 3x growth you've seen. You're in the marketplace. You've got competencies. I want to talk a little bit about the AWS partnership at this point. I know that you've participated in a number of our key programs as well. Adi, you wanted to mention something about the Box program?
Yeah, it's one of those interesting aspects, right? With SEON, we have a financial services competency partner who's absolutely proven out in the industry, and it becomes so easy to engage with customers at scale when we've kind of packaged our joint proposition tightly. And I think that's exactly where we are. We're able to be on marketplace. We're able to get out there on the ground, meet with customers. And we have a very interesting program called the Business Outcome Accelerator. And so a program that's able to directly invest in these individual customer assessments, make it really easy for customer workshops to kind of see how the patterns in fraud and financial crime are changing. That's something that we're really investing into in 2026. And so I wanted to kind of just make that very quick plug in there, which is, when great partners are shaping joint assets, we're able to meet the right persona at the customer. But then to Matt's point, that we're able to do those assessments at that individual customer, use their data, kind of show them the value, and then extract that business case so that the right business leaders are able to invest in it. So just wanted to make a quick mention in there for the Business Outcome Accelerator program.
100%. Yeah. Matt, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the AWS partnership and your journey with us so far.
Yeah. The Business Outcome Accelerator, again, a great thing. I think we've had a lot of focus on the competencies over the last couple of years. And what's different for us versus a lot of vendors that are on AWS is you go through these sort of competency certifications, and AWS actually audits your customer deployments. And we currently hold 3 of them in financial services, retail, and one generally in the SMB space. And each one required us to submit like real case studies, architectural reviews, and sort of proof that our solution deployed in production is like having an outcome. And the SMB one in particular is one I'd call out. I think there's only about 15 or so ISVs that are out there in the entire partner network that hold it. And that's one that's kind of near and dear to our heart because, we were that SMB at one point in time, and we want to be making a big impact within fintech companies and financial services companies, early on. To be able to provide them like a foundational platform to grow with. We've had customers in that space go live in as quick as like 5 days. And so when you think about the way people need to consume technology at a small company that's growing very quickly, it's really important that they need, a fast deployment, less complexity, and then also like they don't want to have to get off of that solution when they achieve success, right? So AWS helps us, scale them in a way that, we've created a pricing model that works on the marketplace that allows them to sort of get in and provide like a really enterprise grade foundation for fraud prevention and compliance. But, they don't have to think about the solution they're going to switch to when they get really big in 3 or 4 years.
Sounds good. I mean, we thoroughly appreciate the partnership, Matt. And again, you've been, we talk a lot with partners about, investing in the competencies to truly differentiate your own value as a partner on AWS. And, it's been fantastic that SEON's really sort of taken that. Great to hear that feedback, particularly about a couple of specific competencies. It's fantastic to hear. So I want to sort of, only got a little bit of time left now, Matt, and I really wanted to sort of start the forward-looking part of our discussion now. And, thinking about, I've heard a lot of people talking about, there's a lot of noise in the market about, AI's, causing concern, or people are thinking about what the AI means for their business. But, in truth, many organizations are expanding their fraud detection parts of their organization and expanding how they think about fraud detection and defense. I guess I wanted to understand from your perspective, like, how should our customers be thinking about it? How should they be thinking about their AI strategy and when it comes to fraud detection? What advice do you have for our customers?
Yeah, I think we went through a period where there was a lot of experimentation, and now we're starting to see customers that are, have learned some lessons and really putting their metal into deployment. But, fraud is growing significantly faster than the global GDP. So like you shouldn't probably expect your fraud spend or the volume of fraud attacks or the losses related to fraud to decrease significantly unless you can find some truly asymmetric way to tackle those challenges. And we feel like AI is really it, right? When we go back to that sort of the ultimate goal of what every fraud prevention solution is to provide our customer with a decision as to whether that's a good actor or a bad actor, a good transaction or a bad transaction. And the battleground is sort of in the middle when the signals intelligence isn't super clear, and looking at hundreds of data points to be able to synthesize something very quickly. That was something that used to take an analyst 15 minutes to an hour before. And if people aren't implementing that kind of scale, then I think they're just going to fall behind very quickly in this case. And with respect to like the adversary, like they're very sophisticated. They work very closely together. When we go out on the dark web and we look at the types of tools and services that are available that are sort of democratizing fraud attacks using AI tooling, it's not going to let up anytime soon. So you really need to get out in front of this and get beyond the experimentation phase and into some like real hard production deployments of these solutions.
And I wanted to add a quick note in there, right? +1, Matt, to everything you called out. And this goes back to one of the first things you said, which is just the nature of the attack surface is changing. The nature of the institutions on the way they had to have fraud and prevent fraud at the micro individual transaction level, all the way to that organizational scale, identifying patterns globally, those responsibilities remain on them while they have to innovate. It's the niche ones that are going to have to bring, new features that can deliver value and act at the expectations that regulators have of large institutions. And all of this is actually coming in a world where we have agentic architectures and possibly attackers, in a world where decentralized finance is coming along, and you're going to see stablecoin transactions and tokenization of assets and the complexity there. So I think one of the unique aspects of what SEON has built with AWS is, it's nimble, it's fast, it's easy to deploy. I think you guys have record deployment times at customers. This is not common in the industry. So, kudos to that. And I want to call out that, a lot of this is actionable, for our viewers. So if you'd like to dive into, how can you learn more? We're going to have a QR code that's going to give you all the details. And what we'd really ask for you to do is, raise a request, and we'd be more than happy to do a joint workshop, dive deep into the specific scenarios that you're thinking about and show that value, because we have proven blueprints that can deliver for these across that knowledge graph and network semantics, all the way into individual scenarios, and then making it really complementary with our partnerships such as SEON and our consulting partners. So it is a vast ecosystem. It's evolving, but it's all about kind of diving deep and kind of solving for that problem in that 4 to 6 week window, and that's actually what delivers results in this ever-changing world.
100%, Adi. I completely agree. Matt, we're just about at the end of our time together. I guess any sort of last words from you? Anything you want to leave our viewers with before we wrap the episode today? Thank you again for the conversation. It's been awesome. But yeah, any last thoughts from you for today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's never too late. So like if you're out there and you're on a fraud or compliance or security team and you feel like everything's moving, fast around you with AI and you're stuck in kind of the experimentation phase, like, finding the, trusted partners to work with, reaching out to AWS and looking at the folks in their network that are really delivering real world business results is super important. I think it's never too late to catch up and try and get ahead. So, the call to action would be, if you're on your learning journey and you want to know more about SEON, take a look, but definitely reach out to AWS. We'd be happy to schedule a joint workshop session with you and get you best of class with respect to AI.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, Adi. Great to see you both. Really enjoyed the conversation. It always goes really quickly. Enjoy the rest of your day. We have part 2 of our segment coming up in just a few moments. But until then, Matt, Adi, thanks so much. We'll see you again next time on Industries Live. Have a great day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Industries Live for the second half of our segment today. Really enjoyed the first half, and we have an exciting partner coming up to talk to us again. If you're just tuning in, welcome to Industries Live, our show that we do every other Tuesday, where we talk to our industry partners about what they're seeing in their industry, what they're seeing in their business, what their customers are telling them. Always a very thought-provoking and engaging conversation. I'm really looking forward to the second part of our discussion today. Welcome. My name is Michael Schmidt. I look after industry partnerships here at AWS. I'm based here in beautiful, sunny / slightly rainy Seattle, Washington. It is actually raining outside, but I believe it's the last time. It's not going to rain again until October. Somebody promised me the other day. And I'm joined by my co-host, Adi Dabashi from New York. Good morning, Adi. How are you today?
Morning, Michael. Good to be on the show. It is a hot summer here in New York already, and we're really excited about the game season that's on across the Knicks game, and we got FIFA coming up with, I think, Australia and the US on a match soon. So excited about that.
Next Friday.
Right, yeah. I'm Adi Dabashi. I lead partner solutions for financial services, and our team works with our partners to solve for those line of business use cases that our customers ask for. It's all about getting specific to capital markets, banking, payments, insurance, and combining the capabilities of our partners in AWS to solve for those line of business challenges. So I'm always excited to come on the show because we get a chance to call out on how our partners are uniquely building for our industry. And one of the topics I'd been very close to when I was at a bank before AWS was all about that speed and throughput when it came to analytics. And I'm super excited to have the ClickHouse team on today.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to welcome Christoph in just a moment. I would say that just as Christoph is coming on, maybe put up the QR code. If you're interested in watching Industries Live on a regular basis, why not subscribe, and you'll get the alerts to let you know about the up-and-coming shows and the content that we've got. We're actually very excited to be taking the show to the New York Summit next week. So we'll be live on the floor at the New York Summit, just in case you're there, which is very exciting. But let's get Christoph on. Sorry, Jeffrey, I messed with your head there. Good morning, Christoph. How are you? It's so exciting to have you on. Perhaps, Christoph, maybe we'll start by, would you like to introduce yourself and perhaps just talk a little bit about ClickHouse and what it is ClickHouse does, and a little bit of history about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Christoph Worm. I'm based in London. I'm a principal solution architect at ClickHouse. 5 years ago, when we started the company, I was actually the first engineer that was not working on the database all day, but working with our users and customers instead. And ClickHouse is it stands for Clickstream Data Warehouse, because it was originally developed for web analytics, and it's the fastest and most popular open source analytics database in the world, built to be able to ingest and query billions and trillions of rows in sub-seconds. And of course, it's one of the big databases run AWS. We have a great partnership with AWS.
Awesome. Christoph, I had the chance to be at a large bank before joining AWS. And, I was walking through the floors with our capital markets teams, the traders. And we're talking about a world where people would used to shout orders, once upon a time. But it all became about the analytics. It became about the algorithmic trading. And it became about the speed of measuring risk. And for that, it's all about that speed of data. So when we had seen this, it used to come down to those bare metal instances and tuning the engine. But that completely changed with the cloud. And now what we're looking at is complete modern architecture that reimagines it. And ClickHouse is at the center of this, right? You are at the heart of risk modeling systems, deep analytics when it comes to asset management. Tell us a little bit about the trends that you're seeing, and kind of where does ClickHouse fit when the listeners are thinking about the use cases that you solve for?
Yeah. I think in financial services, as in many other industries, the expectations are increasing. The requirements are increasing. The expectation is for perfect reliability, for no downtime, for 100% correctness, for no waiting on anything. And this goes through different kinds of use cases. So as you mentioned, right, capital markets, investment banking, quant trading is a big use case for ClickHouse, where you want to have pre-trade access to the data to be able to make trading decisions as fast as possible. You want to have access to all of the data to be able to backtest your algorithms before you put them into production. And then at the same time, post-trade, you want to be able to collect your trades. You want to value them and revalue them. You want to do risk management, and of course, you want to do intraday as well as end of day P&L reporting. And the faster, the better. It's these days the expectations of traders, of desks, of the chief risk officer is that a trade happens, and within seconds you can see it. Like you can see it, and you can see the impact that this trade has on your entire P&L, and you can drill down into it. But it goes beyond that for other use cases as well. So, for example, fraud detection, anti-money laundering, KYC. The expectation is increasingly of even like wider society is that nothing ever slips through the cracks. Like not a single transaction gets approved that shouldn't have been able to go through. And so banks and fintechs and software providers in the space are being pushed to make it possible to run more and more rules and more complex rules for every transaction, and to run these rules on more data, on more data sources that we didn't even really have ago 10, 15, 20 years ago, like social media, and looking further and further back. And so you need systems that are able to do this work, to execute all these rules in sub-second, because, well, nobody wants to wait for a long time for their payment to go through. And then, of course, you have reliability, and generally we all expect that everything in financial services works all the time. And so you need to monitor everything, right? Everything needs to be observed, every system. And in a bank, you'll have thousands of little applications and big applications and systems running, and you need to collect all of the data from them. Logs, metrics, traces, network data, everything needs to be collected, and you want to run alerts constantly on that. And so you need a system as well there that can store all this data and can then alert you when something happens as fast as possible so that you can react quickly. And so all of these are great use cases for ClickHouse. And we haven't even talked about AI, which also sort of changes everything. And if now, maybe in a few years or even today, you don't write your own SQL queries anymore, any queries anymore, but you just have AI do all the work, then that also has quite a big effect on your data platform, on your databases.
Christoph, thinking about use cases, I guess I'm interested in your thoughts about, okay, the use cases that you're seeing the most traction with at the moment, or that your customers are asking you for the most right now. But I'm also interested in your sort of I guess, observations as a technical professional, thinking about, like, where are we headed? Like, what are the use cases that you think are going to be the ones that we need to be focused on the most over the next couple of years, and that you're going to see the most growth in?
Yeah. I mean, personally, like, I'm the most excited about how AI is changing everything, right? Like, where one of the big impacts of having AI, especially AI agents, is that all of a sudden we're not limited by what we can do as humans, right? Like, how many queries can you write per second, right? Like, how many dashboards can you look at? How many charts can you look at in a minute? AI makes everything faster, and this has a big impact on data. Of course, one impact is that you want the data to be fast, because you want your agents to be fast. But I think another impact that, especially in financial services, is important is the impact on cost. Like, let's not forget, right? Like, at the end of the day, we are querying databases, we're querying data platforms, we're using CPU and memory there to run these queries. And so if all of a sudden we have a lot more queries because we have 100 agents or 1,000 agents, maybe in a large bank, doing queries all the time, then all of a sudden the cost is going to be much higher, because especially in the cloud, it's effectively it's consumption based, right? Like, the more you consume, the higher the cost. And so if now you have more queries, more data, so you have a real step change there, then it really matters. And now you might think, oh, a bank has huge IT budgets, like, how much can it matter? But, well, like, if you're spending a large amount of data on your data platform, and then AI leads to doubling of the number of queries, well, now your cost has doubled. It's a huge impact, right? So I think that is something that people were not even thinking about 6 months ago, because AI wasn't such a big thing 6 months ago. But look how much it's changed in the last 6 months. Like, look how essential it has become to all of us, to engineers, to also non-engineers. And so what's going to happen in the next 6 months? Like, are we ready for it? Like, is there like what's going to happen to those budgets, right? Like, maybe we need to re-architect for the future there.
And
I mean, it only takes, I was just going to say, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on top of you there, but yeah, what even in weeks, like I was saying to somebody the other day with, it only takes the launch of one tool and it completely changes the way people work. Like we're been announcing the launch of Amazon Quick over the last few weeks, and how that's had a radical change on the workforce at AWS and how we work every day. I've used it already twice this morning, and it's 8:41 in the morning. And it, the emerging trends in the way people are working, the use cases that they have for being able to use AI are changing like week to week to week. It's almost, I can't remember a time in our industry that it's been more difficult to keep up, honestly. It's so moving so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those interesting aspects where, our financial institution customers understand this, and they are really investing and leaning in. I'm seeing the largest financial institutions, the SIFIs, the banks, really create end-to-end data strategies. It's all about using the right tools for the right job and making sure that you have this composable architecture so each team can get what they need. And so, Michael, to your point, right, we have tools such as Quick that are able to bring the context of one. Literally, when I download the Quick desktop on my machine, it's absorbed my emails, it's absorbed the context of how I'm thinking and how I'm goal, and it has an end-to-end knowledge graph. And so in that case, the knowledge graph is a perfect tool to use in order to get that context. On the other hand, when the use case is very well known, it's all about efficiency, throughput, and performance. And so, risk modeling teams would say, I need my data catalogs, I need my governance, but wait a second, if I don't have this all correctly compiled with the high performance that I need for these specific scenarios, here's the business impact I face. And so, let's say you're a few seconds late on that risk model, well, and a decision can be made on the trading floor that's actually a very heavy cost. And so institutions are understanding this. And so they have a wide catalog of products, but it's about applying the right tools for the right job. And I've seen this kind of really transform in the way ClickHouse is getting applied. We're talking about native integration with our services such as managed Kafka streams, our EKS services, integrated into S3. But that throughput and performance is really making a differentiator. And so, Christoph, I think it's a long-winded view there because I've seen it play out. But tell us a few customer stories that you've seen, right? Because you've worked with these large institutions, and as soon as they see that performance, I see them wake up and say, oh, I did not need to have this all deployed on-prem and on bare metal. I see this architected so well and fully flexible as a catalog for my AI needs, for my risk needs when I apply it. So would love to get a few stories there, but I'm a big fan, so wanted to give a shout out to that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stories, but I think a couple of big ones maybe are there's some very large investment banks like Deutsche Bank and others that have migrated significant workloads to the cloud and away from some of the previous solutions that they were using, right? Like, for example, in financial services, a very popular database in capital markets is KDB. Works very well in the pre-cloud days, but then when you go into the cloud and you all of a sudden have access to these amazing tools like S3 or EKS, where you're all of a sudden a lot more flexible, where you might want to choose a different kind of architecture, separate your compute from your storage, have different compute groups doing different things, different ways of accessing the data. You no longer have these like side of desk, like local workstations, right? Like it's all in the cloud. That's where moving to ClickHouse makes a lot of sense, right? It allows you to build a central financial data warehouse where you have all your data, you have your market data, you have your trades, you have your valuations, you have your portfolios, you have alternative data sources in one place, and then you give everyone access to it, right? So like the one source of truth of your financial data. So that's a very popular use case, especially in the investment banks and in the hedge funds. And then the other use cases, we work with some very large hedge funds where we're doing this real-time risk management and intraday P&L analysis and reporting. And there, we've more been replacing solutions like Postgres or SQL Server, where if you look back, even 5 years ago, or especially pre-COVID, the amount of trading being done on exchanges, which was much lower than it is today, right? Like, not just do you have a lot more trading, traditional sort of trading and just equities, you have, in the last 5 years, you've seen an explosion of trading in derivatives and an explosion of trading in crypto. And all of a sudden, there's a lot more trading venues. Like, it's not just New York anymore, right? Like, it's India. The Indian stock exchange has a huge amount of trades these days, and other stock exchanges around the world. And of course, every hedge fund just wants to go everywhere and wants to be active everywhere. And so the amount of data that you need to collect has exploded. And then how you access and create the data has changed. And there's a lot more people as well, right? There's a lot more quants, there's a lot more traders, there's a lot more algorithms and bots that need to access that data. And so we have really changed those platforms there. And those are the kind of platforms where we're not talking about sub-second, like we're talking about, like, we want to be able to ingest data and have it available every 50 milliseconds. And like, that's a challenge. Like, that's now you get into problems like network latency and cross-region latency, and how long does it take to write an object into S3, right? And how long does it take to then read it out of S3, right? You really, and that's what you want. Like, you really want to push to the limits of the hardware, to the limits of the infrastructure, make the software as fast as possible on top of it. And that's exactly what we're doing at ClickHouse.
And I think this is again a really important aspect for us to make it build out for our customer workshops, right? I've seen that every customer of different shapes and sizes are facing this. You're talking about large institutions that have the engineering muscle and that they can figure these aspects out themselves. But we kind of have two other groups that are really needing to innovate. You have the emerging fintech groups who need the right tool for the right job, and ClickHouse is a perfect fit. You're talking about the fintechs in decentralized finance. We're talking about those that are building prediction markets today, and those that are really looking for the right tool for the right job. And this is where kind of our joint capabilities really complement. On the other side, you have institutions that are far behind, and they need help, and they need handholding. We're talking about the credit unions. We're talking about the mid-tier firms that may not have the engineering muscle. And so one of the unique aspects of ClickHouse on AWS is, you're accessible on Marketplace. You're a financial services competency partner. This is uniquely capability that's been verified, between us and is ready for customers. And so one of the things I wanted to call out is, we do workshops at customers. We call it experience-based acceleration. This is a chance where customers say, look, here's the business problem I'm solving for. Here's the applications I currently use. Help us think through how we could deploy this in the future. And we get into dedicated workshops. We're going to assess the environment. We'll bring the numerous stakeholders in. So the CISO and the product team and the engineering team, all together with the business folks, are sitting together and thinking through how they could rebuild that application on the cloud, built for a cloud native and AI first world. And so I've seen a lot of value here. And we have some really powerful demos built out with the ClickHouse team that are able to showcase, reimagining your asset management portfolio, showcasing risk models, and all of that through those market data sources that are pre-validated and verified. So, for those listening in, if you had to say, well, how do I get to learn more? Definitely check out ClickHouse on Marketplace. But then after that, we really have the ability to do dedicated workshops for customers based on the scenarios, the dedicated use cases that are by capital markets, asset management, banking, and so on. So just wanted to make a quick shout out on that one and really appreciate the partnership, Christoph, that's been built. But I kind of jumped the gun a little there, Michael. Sorry about that. But yeah, maybe you want to go in on the
Sure. Well, I mean, while we're talking about the partnership, Christoph, perhaps we'll talk a little bit about the AWS ClickHouse story. Like, it's been a great partnership. We've worked together for quite some time, but maybe just want to give us a little bit of an overview of like what's been, perhaps a couple of inflection points in the journey of our relationship together, and and talk a little bit about the future.
Yeah, of course. So ClickHouse itself, right, is an open source project that has been like open source since 2016, right? And then 5 years ago, when we started the company, we envisioned right away that we want to build a cloud service. And the first like cloud provider, of course, that we thought of was AWS, right? Like it's the biggest one, it's the best, it has the most services, and it's been a great partnership. So yeah, we launched ClickHouse, we built it together in record time. I think we had to beta up and running within 6 months, and then GA in a year. and it's just grown tremendously from there. We have thousands of customers, joint customers on AWS, on ClickHouse Cloud. And we've built out integrations as well with pretty much every AWS service that we can build integrations with, right? So that's your OS3, your Kinesis, your MSK, integrations with IAM policies, private link, and then like recently more modern things like AWS Glue, for example, Glue Catalog to integrate Iceberg. And then, of course, there's the whole go-to-market, right? AWS is a great company to work with, and together we can really help our customers find value. And as you said, Adi, right, like get those use cases onto the cloud, get them architected the right way, and get the most value out of it.
If you were to be talking to a new partner who's working with AWS from the beginning, like what advice would you have in terms of like what's the secret sauce in success?
I would say just engage early, right? Like engage early and work really closely together, right? Like don't hold back, like ask questions, right? Like for us, the communication with AWS is very much bi-directional, right? Like we have shared Slack channels, right? Like where questions fly back and forth, right? We have regular check-ins, right? Like we have like some more, of course, like formal partnership agreements, right? But at the end of the day, it's about the people on the ground working together.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I've been looking forward to this bit. We're going to pivot to a little bit of a demo now. So perhaps you can walk us through, and we're really going to sort of talk a little bit through a customer lens of what we're seeing. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Christoph, if you just want to walk us through it a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring up the demo. So we have here a sample of trades from the New York Stock Exchange that we get from our data provider, Massive, and it's 1 Parquet file per day going back to September 2025 until a few days ago. And so I'm going to load this data into ClickHouse and then create. First off, let's just do a count, see how many rows we have. We have almost 7 billion rows here. Let's create a table for it. So standard trade field, timestamp, ticker symbol, price, size trade, and a couple of other things. And let's insert the data. And so here we're inserting at a rate of almost over 100 million rows a second. And this is on a single server that costs in AWS that costs less than $10 an hour. So for the price of a coffee in New York or San Francisco or maybe Seattle, you can ingest a few 100 billion rows into ClickHouse. And importantly, you can create at the same time. And that's what a lot of data warehouses and lakehouses are not good at. They have background processes every every few hours to make the data fast. But in ClickHouse, the data is always fast. So here, for example, we're looking at like per month trades, number of trades, volume weighted average price, notional amount for ARM. So you can see sort of once as the price has gone up, of course. And here we go. Like data was now successfully inserted, 6.83 billion rows, over 100 million rows a second sustained. And now let's just query a bit over a month of data, where we're looking at the most frequently traded symbols, and of course, like the S&P 500 ETFs at the top, and the query here over 1 billion rows a second. And again, it's just on a single server, less than $10 an hour. If I need it faster, I can just have more servers, and it will scale linearly. And so this is just a very simple example of the kind of speed that you can achieve with ClickHouse.
I mean, that is massive speed where I mean, this is multifold faster than traditional tools that we'd be using. 6.83 billion rows, 80 plus gigabytes that performance. And you know what this kind of reminds me? It's the cost of who's not using the right tool. So you're at the market scenario, you're getting risk coming at you. You really need to model out your analytics platform to have active decisioning that can be actioned through your AI tools. In an agentic world, agents are going to be actors, whether it's at the transaction layer where fraud can take place, or at the capital market side where trade is taking place. Those who do not have these tools and have not composed them with this joint capability, you're slower, and that fully kind of puts you back when it comes to trading, and that's directly going to hit you on the dollars and cents. Christoph, I mean, you may have seen this, right? The before and the afters. How does that play out when it comes to customers' business value, and what's the cost of not acting?
Yeah. So for example, one interesting story that I heard once, right, is from a hedge fund that I work with, right, and they of course had previous trading systems and risk management systems, right, and it's usually some sort of UI where traders with desks can see their own trades, and this hedge fund built out a POC on ClickHouse, same data as what they had before, and they showed the POC to the desks, to the traders, and the traders thought that this was a static data, that this was a static demo. How is this so fast? How can it just it's a pivot table and I expand and drill down and it just happens immediately. How can it be so fast? But it's not. It's the real data. It's ClickHouse, and so this really helps you move at speed. And the other thing that this allows you to do is we saw the speed at which you can insert data into ClickHouse, right? And so what you do in a large risk management use case is you reinsert the data over and over. You revalue it over and over. You revalue positions, right, based on the newest volatility and other information that you're collecting. And so you are able to ingest several petabyte of data a day into ClickHouse. And so always be up to date and get the most up-to-date risk information. And similarly, of course, also again on the pre-trade side, right? You need access to the data, you need access to all kinds of data feeds, and you will end up with a lot of queries per second, right? And with ClickHouse, some of the larger platforms that I help our customers with have 10,000 queries a second against thousands of data sets. And those queries are all sub-seconds, and they power real-time trading. And this is what allows you to run a really, really sophisticated trading system. And especially, of course, trading capital markets is just so interesting because it's a global market, right? Everybody is competing against everybody else. And so whoever has the data the fastest, just a little bit faster, and has a little bit of the better data and is able to react faster, is going to have extraordinary exponential returns.
Awesome. Christoph, thank you so much. I know we're getting low on time. A couple of kind of closing thoughts before we wrap up for the day. As I've talked a lot to customers and partners over the last couple of months, real-time analytics it's table stakes these days. It's kind of what people expect, and speed is critical. And I think we've talked a lot about speed today. Fraud doesn't wait. Customers don't wait. Regulators don't wait. You have to move. We have to move quickly. And I think speed's such a great part of the ClickHouse story. One of the things in terms of engaging with ClickHouse, you can just put that link back up there again, Jeffrey. Thank you. In terms of you want to learn more about ClickHouse, go to www.com, the clickhouse.com, /learn. It's a great place to get started to learn a lot about the use cases and how to work with ClickHouse. You can look at ClickHouse's marketplace listing. I think we've put the actual clickable link in the actual chat as well. But engage in the conversation and talk to us. I'd love just to get a couple of thoughts from you. Next steps again from your point of view, Christoph. Any sort of last words you want to leave with our customers and viewers?
Yeah, what I would say is, whenever you see a use case or whenever you see something where you have a lot of data, you want to access it very quickly, you want to do aggregations, you want to do analytics, have a think about ClickHouse, right? It's not just about the raw speed. What we haven't really talked about so much is also cost, right? Speed and cost are tightly related. In a consumption-based world, if your queries are faster, all else being equal, your cost will be lower, right? So not only might you make your end users a lot happier with ClickHouse, you might also save quite a bit of money.
Love it, Christoph. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed the conversation. And Adi, thank you so much again. Great to see you both. Again, we'll be at the New York Summit next week. We're very excited to be taking Industries Live on the road again. The live format's always a bit of fun. So if you happen to be at the New York Summit, drop by and say hi. But for now, it's time to wrap for this week. Thank you, Christoph. Thanks, Adi. Great to see you both. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Industries Live. See you again and have a great day.